This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop off the paddle.
You gotta be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You gotta hit it into the hill, one hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome five-time PGA Tour winner, Ryder Cup participant. It's always an honor to have Ken Green on the Sub 70 podcast to kind of do our Masters recap. Friend of the program and love the insights of kind of what these players are feeling, have felt. He's been in all the situations, so it's great to have him. Ken, thanks for taking the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, let me just ask you this. Let's start off with, kind of 1,000 feet in the air. Give me your overviews of the Masters this year, what you saw, things you're taking away from it.
Well, it wasn't. I think it's a clear indication that without all the fans, the Masters isn't quite the Masters without all the roars. That's what I took out of it the most. Because it just, obviously, Hideki was way ahead, and then, things falling apart. But, if we had all the fans and the roars, I think it would have been more exciting. You hear everyone's thoughts is, well, it was kind of a boring, kind of a blah Masters. And I don't know if they would have that same feeling if we had all the roars.
When you kind of look at Hideki and, watching last night in the stats of strokes gained basically with ball striking in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, of where he's at in that consistency, going into hard golf courses, when the ball striking, and you've been there in your career where the ball striking is on point, is it almost a sense of calm that on a difficult golf course that attribute that you have is one hell of an advantage? You almost feel like you can't fake your way around that type of a golf course, and when you've got that level of talent and it's all on 8 cylinders, has to be a hell of a feeling going into a tough week on a tough golf course.
Well, the thing that they didn't mention, and it's related to what you're talking about, is his scrambling was the best for the week. But what that does, when you're hitting it on all cylinders, you don't worry so much about, missing one green here, another green there. And you don't panic as much when you hit the chip shots, and he hit some wonderful chip shots, in the course of the week. And it's amazing how the little mental things that becomes easy or calm the body affects the game. Because how many of our viewers out there understand when they're putting it awful? They put so much pressure on their tee to green game, knowing that the only way they're going to get anywhere near a halfway decent score is if they hit the ball really good, and that puts so much more pressure on you. And then that can turn into you hit it bad. So it's a common effect when that you're going to hit the ball pretty well. And there was, I think, 2 days there was relatively windy, so that makes you have even a calmer effect because you're hitting the ball solid.
When you were in your career, when you were on all 8 cylinders, is it more when you're really, really on? Is it more likely than not that it's all on? Meaning, was your ball striking and your short game in sync per se when you knew you were on all 8 cylinders, or is it rare it all lines up like that, where the putting's great, the chipping's great, the bunker game's great, and you're striking the living shit out of it at the same time? Or when it comes together at the level you guys play at, that's just what happens?
Well, in all honesty, the odds of it all kicking in are not likely. But say there's 4 aspects of the game that that have to be good. When you've got 3 of them, again, you don't worry about that 4th one, because the other 3 are solid. If you're putting good, or you're chipping good, or your irons are good, or you're driving the ball. And if you've got 3 of those, you've got a pretty good chance to contend and it's in Hideki's case, because he hasn't really played up to his abilities the last 3 or 4 years, which, I don't know if they've mentioned enough, because he basically, he won 5 tournaments in a span of, 2 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of disappeared. Was that all just because he just didn't feel good with the putter? I know he's been recently switched coaches. Only he could tell us, and I didn't. I don't think that the media picked up on that. And like Jordan Spieth, everyone has paid attention to because of what he did early on in his career. Finally, won the week before, but just imagine what Hideki was feeling, knowing that he's got the game in place right now. He's got a good chance to win the golf tournament. And the other factor is I don't think Americans understand how much pressure this young man was in for potentially winning, a major. I mean, he's going to be a god over there in Japan. I mean, they are golf nuts over there. And it had to have been so much inner pressure. And you could kind of see it as he started that slow collapse. Was he thinking about it, or was he, what happened? When he makes that bogey on 15, it was like that was all adrenaline. Was he starting to think too much, or all of a sudden he hits this power rocket 4-iron? It was, dead from the minute he hit it almost. And the shot on the second shot on 18, even though the tournament was kind of place, that's all nerves, and it's because he's probably thinking about what it means and the impact it could have, for him and Japan and even Asian golf. It's phenomenal. I for the first time in my life, I was actually rooting for a non-American. And because I understand, having played over in Japan, how golf nuts they are, and what kind of an impact that could have on young kids over there that will start playing golf.
When you were in contention, did you have to factor in the adrenaline rush of that moment? Was it literally like something you're calculating into your yardages and clubs you're grabbing?
I was lucky in the sense that it never really bothered me. So I never had to worry about the adrenaline over kicking me in. I don't know why. I'd be lying if I told you, I knew, and I had the ability to calm myself and all that kind of stuff. I just never worried or thought about it, because I forced myself to pretend that I hadn't won the tournament yet, and so it was all, you have to stay calm, you have to stay within yourself, and of the 9 times that I've won, probably only 3 of them were close, and the others I had kind of pulled ahead, but I forced myself to pretend that it was a close, it was going to be a close call, and so I guess maybe I am paying attention to the adrenaline factor, but it's more of a problem today, and I know this is going to sound weird, because of the swing speed that they have now, and the hard ball.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, you've seen, it wasn't just the Masters, you've seen it all in golf lately, when all of a sudden, their distance control is terrible sometimes, and that's, to me, is all the club head speed and the ball mixed with the adrenaline. That there's no great ball strikers today compared to, my era, or, Jack's era, or, Hogan's era. Not one player, except of Tiger, because you got to throw Tiger out of there, because, Tiger and Jack are on a different planet. That has the ability to control that distance control today, like every other era used to.
But it makes sense. If you probably swung really hard back in the day with a tour balata, it would just probably slightly overspin and balloon. It's not going to take off like a rocket ship.
Right. Well, the good news or bad news is that, in my era or even prior to, if you swung as hard as they do now, you would never play professional golf.
Right.
Because your misses are so far off the planet.
Right.
You wouldn't even be able to get out on tours. It's not that anyone in those areas couldn't swing that hard. It's just that because of the equipment that we had, you couldn't play professional golf swinging that hard.
Well, you have been in contention in majors, so you've been in Will Zalatoris' position. And for his first time there, I thought he handled himself great. Would love to get your opinion. What is that like when you look up at a leaderboard and you say to yourself, "Holy hell, I am in contention at a major"? Like, what's that do to you? And when you, in your case, how did it affect anything? And then kind of what's your take on what he kind of accomplished this week?
Well, I thought what he did was amazing. I mean, his first ever Masters. I mean, the Fuzzy's the only one that's ever won it on his first try. I know Gene Saracen did, but it was a brand new Masters, so you can't count that. So think of how hard that is because Augusta National is so tricky, and you just have to know it. It's not that the one player from an era couldn't do it. It's just Augusta National is that tricky a golf course. And for him to go there and just kind of let it happen, he did great, but then he also, his weak spot is clearly his putter, because at least that's what I've been told by, quote, my friends. And so I'm not going to say that it was the pressure of Augusta and the Masters that, when he missed some of those, makeable putts. So I think it's just him. That's his weak spot. And when he ever gets that straightened out, he's going to be tough. I mean, they talk about us being young, but today 24 is not young. The young kids are developed so much faster that they can go out there and contend at 21 or 22, 23, and 24. I mean, just look how many young kids that are out there that are just, great golfers. I mean, again, is it because of technology, or is it because of there's so much more out there for them to hone their game and become better faster, that you're basically getting a head start on people when you're 21, 22 years old? Because in my era, unless you were Jack Nicklaus, you didn't contend at that age. I mean, it wasn't even a thought, because there was so much more to learn.
I think that's true, right? You guys hit your prime in your 30s, almost like the 20s by the time you guys got on tour was almost like the college days now for these guys. Like you had to learn how to be a professional, essentially, right? Like almost learn how to compete. Then you were, your generation was your 30s was your prime.
Yeah, absolutely. And, now, like I said, they literally have a good 7-8 years of prime age now that, anyone, playing in my era or later didn't have. And, again, that's like a combination of everything we've just been talking about. And it's, they're ready. Jordan and Justin and Colin Morikawa, I think I just butchered his name, but, they're all ready at 22, 21, 23, 24 to win, golf tournaments and majors. It's not, people don't understand it's not harder to win a major because it's a major. It's harder to win a major because it's set up harder. Like a U.S. Open, if you're nervous off the tee and you drive it in the rough, you make bogey. If you're nervous and drive it in the rough on a regular tour event, most of the time you're okay because it's just a rough. So it's not any easier to win a regular tour event. It's just the conditions aren't going to penalize you as much.
What's it like to get in contention at a major? What goes through your mind? What's the body do? What sort of happens?
Well, I think each person's different. I was too, me personally, I was too aggressive, and that was too dumb. So, the course would eat me up because you can't hit every shot perfect. But I think the players who don't worry about it, don't think of it as a major, and are the ones that are going to contend the best. Look at X-Man, who is going through a stretch here of trying to win and can't get over that cycle. Imagine how much harder it is every time he does something like he did yesterday. That goes back in his memory bank. Now he's got nothing but negative memory banks. So, he's got to figure it out. And what he's doing now, or at least in my opinion, what's going on in his head, and only he knows that on the golf course, has to be changed. He can't keep the same mindset because it's not working.
So you don't like these things where they call it, well, the more you're in contention, the more you're there, the easier it's going to get. He's knocking at the door. You're thinking something's got to change versus just keep knocking. Because one could make the argument, too, God, he's there enough. Eventually, he learns from these things and you get over the hump. There's also the argument of you should have gotten it done by now. Like it's a pretty remarkable record of how many second-place finishes and how close this guy is and how good he is. And it's something there where it's almost like the Ricky Fowler thing with that couple-year stretch where he was in all these majors. They just can't quite get over the edge, and it's got to be frustrating for those guys. But they're so I think Softly's so good. He's got to win one of these at some point.
Well, you would think, but then I am a believer of the opposite. I believe the more you do it and the more you fail, the harder it gets. And I believe that you have to recognize, and only he can tell you that. He's not going to tell anybody but his closest friends. Mm-hmm. And that might be less than a handful of guys, because think about it. You have to admit something you're doing is wrong. And, we're human beings. We hate doing that. But he's doing something wrong. And only he knows what it is. He
kind of let on a little bit on 16, right? He said, well, in the past I saw a lot of people with that little fade into that mound and let it go to the hole, and he tried to hit the hard, the hook. It's did he let on a little bit that, like, almost like you talked about, where he's playing so well that all of a sudden, you guys think you can pull off every shot, because a lot of times you can, and all of a sudden it's just, a little minute pull with the hook, and boom, there's a double, there's a triple. I wonder if he's getting a little bit aggressive where he's not playing the shot Tiger would have played, for instance. He hit that little tiny cut into that mound and let it roll in there.
I listened to him try to explain the shot, and him saying he was happy. He didn't have any problems with it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Not being honest.
Well, is that a deflection just to make yourself feel positive about it? I mean, I imagine there's got to be a little bit for you guys don't want to tell yourself I hit a terrible shot under the circumstances, right? Like you don't want to have that wound. I'm assuming there's some self-preservation there, maybe.
Right, but that's my point, in the sense that if you don't face reality, you're going to keep making the same mistake. And to me, it's like he's just better off saying I screwed up and I hit the wrong shot, instead of that's the mental coaches of today. They want you to never say anything negative, and it's like that makes no sense. I mean, he says he hits his A iron 180, and it came up about maybe almost 14, 15 yards short.
Yeah.
And he said, well, the wind switched. First of all, the gust, it swirls a little, but it never flips 180. It doesn't go from, all of a sudden kind of a little downwind to dead into the wind. It might quarter a little, but there's no way it flips both ways. It just physically doesn't happen. So it's, I think he's better off accepting it, saying I hit the wrong shot. It was a dumb play, and he can learn from that, but only learn from it if he accepts it.
Right.
If he tries to defend what he's done, then how do you change? How do you fix that the next time you're in the hunt? He clearly played great that day. He makes a double and a triple. and you just can't do that in any major. You can't do it in any tournament, really.
And then
But
he
you
fights
definitely
back.
can't do it in a major.
Then he kind of fight. But you're right; those usually wind up biting you in the ass, right? If you have numbers like that, you add them up over 72 holes, and those big numbers like that will usually there's the difference maker, right? A couple of those off the card, and he's right there.
Jordan Spieth was the same way. He made a triple and I think 2 doubles. I think they mentioned the stat that only 3 players have won the Masters making a double bogey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty unbelievable when you think about it, because, we all screw up. I couldn't even tell you, the tournaments I've won, whether I made a double or not. But, that's a pretty amazing stat that only 3 players have made a double bogey and won the golf tournament. And here you got 2 players that made triple bogeys and a couple of doubles. And that's the reason they didn't win the golf tournament.
Right. The math, it's hard to argue with math, right? It's just going to prove out that in the long run, it's at a major especially where you can't normally make as many birdies to kind of make up for those mistakes. It's going to bite you. Get your take on Spieth, right? Like, what a comeback. Golfers go through ups and downs in their career to kind of get himself back to where he's at after that, 2.5 years of really struggling. What are you sort of seeing with him, and does it look physical to you? Does it look more mental, where he just looks in a better place? Like, just from afar, what are you sort of seeing of why it's working again?
Well, he went on to make what I call the Tiger effect. Tiger has fooled the world in that, he's changed his swing 3 different times and went on to, keep winning. And too many players go on and win majors and other tournaments, and all of a sudden they feel like they have to make a change, and there's been a lot of them that have done this, and most of them have fallen off the world. Now, Spieth looks like he's coming back, but in Spieth's case, when he makes the changes, it wasn't working, and then the demons start catching in. Again, he never mentions it, but you can't tell me he didn't have the demons in his head these past couple of years when things were just, oh my God, what happened to Jordan Spieth? And now you fast forward to this year where it took him a while, to win, where he finally won, at Valero. But I believe that, too, is effect of the mental part, where his demons were still hanging in there, and he hit some of these god-awful shots. You can't hit the ball so far offline like he does, being a professional golfer, and have a calm mind. So he was fighting those demons. And I think he still has a couple of them in there, but I think you're very close to seeing the old Jordan Spieth soon.
Do you think those swing changes were just where golf is going? So I'm going to try to chase distance and not chicken wing the damn thing through, and then it, like you said, there's a lot of not ruined careers, or careers that go sideways and ruined, I guess, if people try to chase what they think they're going to get to the next level, and it just doesn't work. I mean, to me, it always seemed like he's going to hit, sort of his golf swing, sort of an anti-flip, hold-on sort of scenario, and he could always kind of, cut it out there and make it sort of work. And he chips and putts really great, and that kind of move is great for short irons, and he just played his game. And to me, it looks like it's a little bit more back to what just, some people would say, well, the golf swing is not exactly aesthetically, pleasing or perfect. But to me, it works. He just sort of holds it off, and a little bit of a chicken wing, and the club stays really square for an extended period of time, and he's got enough body rotation. He still hits at 300 yards. He's fine. Play your game.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, no, I think, again, I think the worst mistake people make is feeling like they've got to make these changes to get better. And, what made Jordan think this? Let's see, he's picked off 3 majors and 11 tournaments, and what was it, 3 years? But if I want to be better, I've got to make these changes. I'm like, I don't understand that theory. That, first of all, it's like, when you're being honest with yourself, do you really think that you have the capabilities and the drive that you're going to come close to catching Tiger, or you're going to come close to catching Jack's record. You know, I mean, those guys only come along every blue moon. So why are you trying to fix something that is maybe not up to other pros' standards? It's your weak spot. You know, it's your Achilles. You know, and yet you're still successful. You know, it's I don't know if it's a human drive, or does a teacher get involved, or does a manager get involved, or friends? What makes that guy want to all of a sudden say, I've got to gain 15 yards or I'm going to be doomed?
Right. When the proof is in the pudding of just play your game, man, right? Just play your game.
Right. Plus, the thing that no one understands is that except for the U.S. Open, the other three majors are never going to be really long golf courses. And even the U.S. Opens aren't always going to be long. You know, Torrey Pines, where they're playing the Open this year, has the potential to stretch out to like 7,600, I think.
Right.
But they won't play it there.
Right.
You know, and so it's not like you need that distance, because the U.S. Open pars are beautiful.
Right.
So, you know, so you have a 5-iron in your hand, it's a 6-iron, or you have, you know, you're not flag hunting in majors anyway.
Right. Right.
So, you know, what made you think that you needed to get this distance? You know, I mean, this kid's got a phenomenal short game. You know,
well, I always
so
thought
I
that,
don't.
Yeah, or a great iron player, right? Because there's just so little hand rotation. Just beautiful with irons. Like, there's the benefit of that kind of motion, right? I mean, you know more about this than I'll ever dreamed of, but it's just there's not much to go wrong with that.
Yeah, no, his iron play is well above average for the pro world, and so to me, it's like I'll take the 15 yards less every time when I know I can hit my irons as good as I do, and
exactly.
You know, chip and putt as well as I do. But you know, that's the mystique of the game, that you know we all fall trapped into, you know, sometimes thinking you have to improve something to get better, and maybe you didn't have to.
I was going to ask you on Phil, too, because you played the tour in your 40s. You know, Phil has just turned 50. And there's the inconsistent, you know, he looks great, right? He's lost weight, he's in great shape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yet the inconsistency in his game is starting to show at the point of, you know, in his late 40s and his 50s. What happens to a pro golfer at that level? Is it more mental? Is it tougher physically? Like, what's the main difference when you still look physically great, you know, when you're trying to do this in your late 40s versus at 31 years old? You know, why, no matter how good the player is, what happens? Because it seems to be a trend line as you start getting close to 50, the consistency week in, week out is just not what it used to be, say, you know, 10, 15 years earlier in their career.
Right. Well, Phil's a real mystery because, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's maybe in the top 10 or top 15 that's ever played the game. And in the last 5 years, he's gone on this power fit, you know, hit it long, hit it long, hit it long. And, you know, look what's happened to his game. I mean, this is a guy who, like I said, you know, if Tiger wasn't around, would be considered the greatest player in this era. And he has, you know, I can't figure it out, because how can you be so good and all of a sudden get something stuck in your head that you can't play well unless you bomb it? And again, this is another guy. As you age, you don't putt it like you used to. I mean, I don't care what anybody tells you. You know, it's your eyes just aren't the same, and then maybe you have a little loss of touch. You know, see everyone now. You know, you got the claws and this and that and that. But you know, 30 years of pressure golf has an effect on the body, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see what Phil's going to do. I was a believer that Phil would never play the senior tour.
Me
and
as
I'm
well.
clearly dead wrong on that.
Yeah, does eventually. Well, I agree with you. I always thought he's never given up the big show, right? He's going to be out there at 58 years old, still trying to bomb it because he wants the big show. But the question I would have is, does it start wearing on you of missing cuts in T42nd every week when you go on the Champions Tour and compete and win, which is more fun.
Yeah,
it doesn't need the money.
No, yeah, it's about competing, and once he realizes that he can't compete, or at least can't compete doing it this way, which has surprised me. Why hasn't the light gone off, said, I can't compete trying to hit these bombs? I mean, here's another guy who was a great iron player. He was above average iron player. So why do you want that extra 15 yards, 20 yards, and it's like, but he also wants to compete. There's going to come a time when the light bulb will go off and says, what am I doing out here? I'm gonna compete maybe once a year, and I think he likes winning too much. I like I said, I was dead wrong on him. I think he will go to the senior tour because it's not as much pressure, and you still get to compete and try to win. And golfers are about winning. It's not, like I said, it's not about money. I mean, Phil's got gazillions amount of money, so he's driven by competing. Like Jack Nicklaus, when he couldn't compete anymore, he just stopped playing golf. He doesn't even play golf. Well, I mean, obviously you're 86 now, that's different, but
right.
When he was 70, he didn't play golf with friends or anything like that. And Arnold Palmer plays till he died. We're all different in that respect, but it's clear Phil loves to compete, and if you listen to him, he tries to beat you in ping pong, he tries to beat you, playing, horse or anything, and he's going to have to go to the senior tour eventually. It's just, if he wants to keep doing this, maybe two or three more years of beating himself up against the wall, and then he'll finally say, "Ugh, yeah, this is." I ran into Ernie Els the other day at the course I was playing, and we were talking, and I was asking him how he liked it. He says, "Oh man, this is the way golf's supposed to be played." We put so much pressure on ourselves on the regular tour, that we've all made the mistake of just trying to beat ourselves into the ground so hard, and that if we learned to play like we are now, enjoy the game, and still compete, we would be better. Think how much better you'd be at 25 and 30 if you had that mindset
of the freedom.
But,
just let it go and just right.
We're young and we're dumb when we're that age, and we don't think about that.
So Ernie's really enjoying that out there at this point, from what you get from it's enough competition.
He's never had so much fun.
Yeah. And he can compete and win, right? Like, once again, he'd have a hard time winning on the PGA Tour, my guess would be, at this point. He just doesn't put it well enough. Right, to compete against the 25-year-olds.
Right.
Last subject I was going to ask you on is the whole the Bryson experiment, par 68 at Augusta. You think it would line up really well? Obviously, it's worked well, like in round 2. Then there's the blow-up. What are you sort of seeing on this experiment of where he's going, and do you think these, the golf course like Augusta, in theory, should be in his wheelhouse of hitting that big high draw way over different lines that no one else has taken? Why is it not working, I guess, at this point, in your opinion?
Well, you got to remember, this is really his first year of doing it. I know he played in November, but in November it was a different golf course than it's going to be the rest of his days. So, and golf's hard. It doesn't matter whether you're, Ben Hogan, hitting every damn fairway, or whether you're Bryson hitting, 3 fairways. And Augusta is you're gonna take some high numbers when you keep swinging like that. And it's people forget at the Open when he wiped everybody out at Winged Foot how well he putted.
Yeah.
Because he can hit it so much harder than everybody. Oh my God, he bowed and gouge. He didn't bomb and gouge it. Beat everybody. He out putted everybody. And on tour, those who putt the best win. You know, they're all par 68s for everybody. You know, I mean, in my era, you might have been able to say they were par 70s. You could maybe get home on 2 par 5s at, each course, so to speak. You know, but now there's not a par 5 that nobody can get home. It doesn't mean you're going to make birdie every time. You know, but Bryson is a hate or like kind of guy. You know, so if you're not a fan of Bryson, when he screws up, you're gonna, people are gonna beat him up, and then he'll have his tournaments that he's gonna win, but he's never gonna be consistent. I mean, I think it's impossible to swing that hard and be consistent. So he's gonna have to say, all right, I'm gonna have 4 or 5 times a year that I'm gonna be on, and then it's just a question of how well he putts those particular times.
The other interesting part, I think, with him is I can't imagine him being 44 and still doing this effectively. Like, to me, it's got like about a 10-year run in it, like a NBA player or something, and the body is going to say, I can't do this.
Yeah, I don't even know if he can get 10 years. I mean, it's a mystery. I mean, I just don't think the body can withhold a whole lot of that, massive swings. Look at the players now. I mean, how many of them been hurt? The Jason Days and the Normans that were all physically fit. But their body broke down. Tiger and VJ, and it really has yet to be seen the impact the modern swing is going to have on a guy when he gets to be 45 or 50 years old. And then heaven forbid 60, not playing wise, but just pure health wise.
Well, I think, but then one could argue, and it makes sense, that he'll have enough money and enough championships. Let's say it lasts for 10 years or 12 years on tour. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, you're just going all for broke.
Oh,
and at
absolutely.
38, you're going to be done, and then you're done. Okay,
right.
You got a couple $100 million bucks in the bank. And
most golfers don't like that, though. The idea that it's only going to potentially be a 10-year or 15-year career, because, golf's a longevity game. But financially now, I mean, guys that aren't even winning are set for life after 2 years, 3 years. So I don't think these kind of individuals are driven by money. Some guys are. Some guys, it's once you get enough money in the bank, it's not so, you don't work quite as hard, you might goof off a little more, who knows, and that's okay, because not everyone can be a Tiger Woods or a Phil Mickelson and so damn driven. BJ Singh, oh my God, man, this guy's still hitting thousands of balls for Pete's sakes. So you're correct, it might be the way of the future where a guy just says, I'm going to go, nuts for 10 years, and then I'm done, and it's okay.
Well, I was talking to Kelk about this. Even guys from your generation on the Champions Tour, he was joking, like, it looks like the people are just passing around the bottle of Advil. Like, you guys were, even you guys not swinging balls out by 50 had nagging injury. There's just no way you're making it out there to 50 for playing. Would you guys all play for 20? You don't play 20, 25 years on tour. At 50, your body is not somewhat half destroyed, right? Between hip, back, shoulder, left wrist, right? Like, you're not 100% ever again by the time you turn 50 on the Champions Tour, right? Like, you're playing with something not right constantly.
The Bernard Langers of the world are very rare, where he just has had no physical injuries. It just, golf is one of the worst things for the body that you can do. I know there's tons of people out there that don't think, golf is really a, quote, athletic game, but just go talk to the doctors. Golf is the worst thing you can do for your body. Our bodies aren't meant to move like that.
And after 9 million, as hard as you guys would go at it, and the impact what that does to joint, eventually it just breaks down, right? It just
absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
It's the person who probably doesn't get enough credit, and this is probably because he was such a dick, is Sam Snead. Because that man had a body that was just unique. never broke down. He's 60 years old and he got his foot up over his head. He had one of those fluke bodies that just
like he was competing on the PGA Tour at 60 sometimes.
Yeah.
But he's the anomaly, right? If you like you said when you were on the Champions Tour playing, you probably know the guys. How many of the guys post round look like they're about half? They won't let say names, but their bodies are half shot, right? They're just
absolutely.
Yeah,
you can tell by the ones. There's two ways of telling. One, you can tell by how they walk. Also, if they don't hit balls afterwards, you know that it's because one, they're hurting. Maybe they're a little more relaxed and not as worried about it. But chances are, if they weren't hurting, they would be hitting balls. It's a golfer's nature to try to go fix a problem. And you just, we all, some people kiddingly say we have so many breaths in us before the big guy takes us home. Well, you only have so many swings in you before the body starts breaking down. It's inevitable unless you're one of those flukes.
Well, always great stuff. I love your insights. Like I said, it's always a great conversation, and thanks for taking the time. Kind of wraps up the Masters weeks and gives us that perspective of, you've seen so much in your career and accomplished so much. You've been on all sides of these things, so it's always just great to pick your mind, get your concepts, and kind of, have the conversation. So thanks, my friend. I really appreciate it.
You got it, buddy. My pleasure.